Chapter 42. The Amaranil Mercantile Company's ship pulled into Ithenel Harbor that morning as well, sailing past the encampment of refugees from Nassim and Oso Creek. The problems from the North Country have followed us back to Ithenel. Bach's stomach sank at the sight of the people now crowding the riverbank, with nowhere else to go. Let's only hope our good fortune did as well. Aventil steered the boat toward the dock. Good fortune? That was enough to turn Kotarian around. By Patharian's pungent perspiration, we have encountered nothing but trouble on this entire mission. True, Aventil admitted, but we survived it and returned home. I say that counts as a victory, my friend. Don't notch your victories too soon, the sorcerer grumbled. Bach had to admit he spoke true. The next challenge would be the most dangerous by far. Aventil quickly tied up the boat, while the others gathered only their most necessary possessions. The terror and lawlessness Bach experienced in Nassim hadn't completely consumed Ithenel. Yet. Sailors worked hard bringing ships into the harbor and preparing them to go to sea. Dock workers unloaded ships, horse-drawn wagons hauled goods away from the waterfront and into the city. One glum wagoner caught Aventil's eye. "Ahoy, my good man! Is your wagon open for work? We're prepared to pay up front." "Afraid not, though I wish it were." The wagoner propped his elbows on his knees and his chin upon his palms. "I was supposed to receive a load of fresh corn, but the boat bringing it up from Nassim and I reckon they got caught in whatever madness is going on up there. So here I sit. Looks like a day of lost wages for me. But I gave my word I'd unload this cargo and take it to the city." Aventil smiled and raised a finger in the air. "Fortune may smile on you yet, sir. You won't have to load our cargo. Just take it into town. Even if your client does arrive, you'll be back in time to meet it." This offer grabbed the man's interest. "So, what is your cargo?" Aventil gestured to Bach, Isabella, and Kotarian. "You are looking at it." The ride into the city center was hot and bumpy. The wagon normally transported vegetables, not people. Sitting on its hard wooden bed, every divot and rut in the road burrowed into Bach's spine. He and his friends barely heard each other over the cart's wheels clattering over Ithenel's cobblestone streets. So they mostly just sat in silence, each preparing in his or her own way. Aventil checked and rechecked the tautness of his bowstring and inspected each of his arrows for the tiniest of flaws. Kotarian rolled his neck, flexed his fingers, stretched his arms, and quietly repeated spell-casting mantras he had first learned before he was old enough to shave. Isabella sat with her knees pulled up against her chest, eyes closed, deep in thought. I wonder whose mind is racing faster, hers or mine? There wasn't much Bach could do to get ready for what was to come. Even if there were, he was too nervous to do it. The streets of Ithenel were as crowded and cacophonous as ever. Some things never changed, even in the face of a national emergency. People and work animals moved up and down at a deliberate pace, oblivious to the importance of the weather-beaten vegetable wagon moving through the crowd. At one point they had to stop for 5 full minutes as a cart carrying a heavy oak bookcase stopped in the middle of the road to unload its cargo. Bach was torn between complete fear at the prospect of facing Salandrian and the scions of Cenarion, and the unbearable sense of waiting for the inevitable. Bach's mother used to say, "The dread usually proves worse than the reality." But the likelihood of that being true here wasn't good. Finally, after 2 full hours of uncomfortable, anxious riding, they made it to the center of the shining city and the royal palace. They instructed the driver to take them down King Isnaro's street, toward the back entrance to the palace and past Cenarion Square. But when the tall oaks lining the street cleared, they did not expect what they saw. "Look, What on earth is that golden aura covering Cenarian Square? To Bach, it looked like a giant pine tree had leaked sap onto the gray stone campus, trapping the people inside like bugs preserved in resin. Aventil dropped a bag of coins in the wagoner's lap and instructed the man to stop, but Kotarian already struck one leg out of the wagon and leaped to the ground before the cart came to a complete stop. Plenty of Ithenel's residents continued about their business as though nothing was wrong, paying no attention to the giant magical dome or the people trapped within it. To them, this undoubtedly was just another bizarre magical experiment conducted by those odd and aloof sorcerers on Cenarian Square. But many others gathered around the square. One well-meaning fellow tried to push his way into the field and reach a trapped man inside the edge of the spell. Instead, the stasis field engulfed the would-be rescuer, where he became another motionless mannequin in a pool of dark yellow syrup. The concerned onlookers included a half-dozen uniformed constables. While they could do nothing about the spell, they tried to keep any more victims from being swallowed by the stasis field. "Step back! This is a dangerous spell," one constable said to Bach, Isabella, Aventil, and Kotarian as they approached. "I appreciate your dedication to public safety, Constable, but I assure you, if anyone can help, it will be the four of us." Princess Isabella, I am sorry, Your Majesty." The constable stepped away. "Do not apologize for serving the kingdom admirably. Please continue to keep onlookers at a safe distance. There could be more trouble. Just know that we are working to solve this problem."
"Yes, Your Majesty."
The constable gave Isabella a crisp salute and stepped away to let her and the others examine the dome. "I've never seen anything like it," Bach said as he, Isabella, and Aventil followed Kotarian in racing toward the spell-covered campus. Kotarian stopped in front of the amber dome and stared agape at the immobile people inside.
"I have. It is a stasis spell of some type."
He pointed to a bearded man inside the sphere. The man had been stepping out of a classroom building and into the campus yard when the spell struck. A bird likewise was caught in midair some 10 feet over his head.
"That is Panandrian, one of my first-year teachers."
Kotari didn't take his eyes off the scene in front of him.
"Panandrian wasn't much of a spellcaster, but he was a fine teacher and a kind man. One of the few instructors who showed me any patience or understanding as an apprentice."
He pointed to a young woman who wore a jacket just like Kotarian's, who was taking a break between classes to enjoy a cold drink in the afternoon sun. Her contented smile now was frozen for eternity, unless the spell could be lifted.
On the bench there? That is Sumakian. She and I had numerous classes together as acolytes. She was preparing for a career serving the house in magical logistics. One of the few classmates I didn't find annoying."
He then pointed at a short man picking up litter from the grounds.
"Even the serving class fellow there. I never knew his name, but he always was cheerful and diligent in his work. He greeted me with a wave every time he saw me. Perhaps I should have been equally polite to him."
"You'll have that chance," Bach said. "You said yourself you've seen this type of spell before. Surely you know how to counter it."
"Oh, I am familiar with stasis spells and their counters," Kotarian replied. "Except that such spells typically are employed to immobilize one person or creature. An unruly prisoner, for example, or a mad dog. But such a spell applied to an entire city block. The power that such a spell would take is beyond my comprehension. Tell me, Baron Blacksmith, how does one counter a spell like that?"
Bach had no answer, but Isabella offered a thought. "Salandrian must have found this in those ancient spell books. The sorcerers from the time of Queen Imberia were said to have developed spells of amazing power and destructiveness. This stasis dome must be one of them." Bach stared up at the dome, completely unable to move. This This is way beyond anything Tovano can do, beyond anything I ever thought possible. Well then, what? We let this stand forever? Those people will be frozen in place for the rest of their lives, Aventil exclaimed. Kotarian put his hand to the back of his head. No. There is a way to bring it down. Take down the people who cast the spell. Even with the arcane knowledge Salandrian has collected, something this complex would require conscious thought to maintain. My highly informed assumption is that after casting the spell, he assigned some of his acolytes to maintain it. So, all that means is that we have to defeat the most powerful sorcerer in the kingdom, if not the world, as well as an unknown number of other highly trained magic users. Just a small task. As the others continued to examine the dome, Bach walked over to the edge of Cenarian Square near the royal palace, hoping to clear his mind. He looked inside the gardens and saw something that made his mouth tighten and brow furrow. Isabella? You need to see this. The others raced across the square to the sidewalk outside the palace. A greenish-blue wall enclosed the royal gardens. Unlike the dome covering Cenarian Square, this wall was a standard spell, much like the one protecting the Gruternel estate in Nassim. But it kept people out of the gardens as well as in. And then it was Isabella's turn to have her heart skip a beat or two. There is father, and Wingate. They are safe and well. Oh, thank the Exalted One! She waved frantically, but the king and his royal guardians did not see her, and the magical wall barred any sound from passing through. She clasped her hands together in front of her chest. Salandrian and the Scions must have forced them out of the palace and into the gardens, only to hem them in with this spell. That means Salandrian and his rebel band have control of the palace. Defeating them would require an assault on the center of Emerinia's government and Isabella's family home. Salandrian had managed to do what the Masork Empire could not 300 years before, unseat the royal family of Emerinia. But Bach knew Isabella cared nothing for the historical or political implications of their plight. Her only concern was rescuing her father and his royal guardians. She raised her hands to the barrier and repeated the spell Tovano used in Nassim to enter the Gruternel estate. The wall shimmered and blinked out of existence, but only for a split second, reappearing exactly as it was. Isabella redoubled her efforts, this time shouting the spell's incantation. But again the barrier quickly reappeared as soon as it had vanished, and as strong as ever. No, this must work! Isabella raised her hands to try a third time. Then Kotarian put his hand on her wrist. Your Majesty, the spell is too strong. We cannot disrupt it. But father is trapped inside. Until we free him and the others, they are at Salandrian's mercy. She wrestled her hand away from Kotarian, tears pooling in her eyes. I had relied on aid from the House of Magic, only to find them already defeated. Then I see father in danger, and I can do nothing to help him. We have traveled so far, and come so close. She could not finish before the sobbing began. She put her hands over her face and wept into them in deep, ragged breaths. Tears appeared in Bach's eyes, too. She's hurting so much. We depend on her leadership and courage. I have to pick her up until she is ready again. We just have to find a different way. He repeated himself, more forcefully this time. We will save your father, and the kingdom with it. Aventil put his arms around Isabella and pulled her into a warm hug, the first time Bach had seen him do that since their argument. She leaned into his chest and put her arms around his waist. She still cried, but more calmly than before. Bach is right, my love. Bach hoped he could back up his bold words. He was ready to fight to save everyone he and Isabella cared about. He was willing to die if necessary. But how could they breach Salandrian's defenses to even challenge the power-crazed sorcerer? Folk magic wouldn't do much good in this scenario, and if even two skilled sorcerers such as Isabella and Kotarian were flummoxed by Salandrian's magical defenses, what hope did an absolute beginner have? But Aventil had an idea. He let go of a now calmer Isabella. "Follow me. I think I can get us inside the palace gardens."
Don't tell me there are swampy, bug-infested underground smuggling tunnels under the royal palace, too.
Kotarian rubbed imaginary insects off his arms. "Not exactly, but there is a back way in." Aventil's hands gestured excitedly down the hill the palace stood on. "Remember, I talked to everyone in the palace, including the kitchen staff and housekeepers. The palace was built on the highest point in Ithenel." Bach nodded. Even students in Soul of Valley's one-room schoolhouse learned that much. "Well, down on Queen Imberia Avenue, there is a narrow passage at the bottom of the hill. King Imbrilio had the house sorcerers of the day cut it through the bedrock so that the servants from West Town have a more direct path up the hill on days when the weather was nasty. It's only wide enough to walk single file up the passage, but it opens inside one of the outbuildings, right beside the west gate. The door inside the outbuilding is locked, except during shift changes, so your father could not use it to escape on his own. Still, though, we should be able to get inside Salandrian's wall and unlock the door with a spell, unless he is aware of the servant's passage." "I wasn't even aware of this passage." Isabella laughed through the last of her tears. "Thank you, Aventil. That is incredible."
Isabella, how did you not know of an entrance into your own home?
Bach joked, and she laughed some more. "Well, my home is the royal palace, you know. It is not exactly a cottage." Isabella then gathered the three men in around her and looked them each in the eyes before speaking. "My friends, words cannot describe the love I have for you. You three are here when I need you the most." "We're all here for each other," Bach said, "and for the people of Imerenia." Aventil nodded firmly, and even Kotarian tilted his head in a manner that indicated he didn't completely disagree. Isabella smiled. "For the people of Imerenia. Now, let us go save my father and our kingdom." With Isabella in the lead, they ran down the hill to Queen Imberia Avenue and the below-ground passageway. The West Gate was closest to West Town, the nearest serving-class neighborhood to the royal palace. Many of the workers employed at the palace or on Cenarian Square lived here in rows of modest 2- and 3-story apartment buildings. The passage entrance stood at the foot of the hill, where West Town ended. Bach saw people gathered outside of every building. No doubt most of them had family members trapped inside Salandrian's snare. These people weren't his intended targets, but they would suffer all the same, as the serving class always did in times of war. Unless we can do something to help. Aventil yanked the bronze handle of the passage's heavy oak door. It swung open. "By the Exalted One, our fortune holds. Old Wormface didn't put a barrier on this door. We may well be able to get inside the gate yet." Countless thousands of boots had worn the granite floor smooth. As the passage was completely cut off from sunlight, mounted torches every 25 yards lit the space. Isabella insisted on going first into the tall, narrow walkway, followed by Aventil, then Bach, and finally Kotarian. Unlike the long abandoned tunnels under the glass foundry, the passageway leading up the hill was well maintained and frequently used. Thick pine beams had been mounted floor to ceiling and across the roof for support. The small confined space made Bach's skin crawl as though a legion of spiders had taken residence under his shirt. But the real horror is what waits on the other side of the tunnel. What will we do once we are inside? He asked Isabella as they hustled through the passage.
To kill the dragon, cut off its head, Kotarian interrupted. Once Salandrian is dead, the scions of Cenarion will crumble. We should strike where we have surprise in our favor.
The princess turned her head, but kept moving forward. No. Our objective right now, our only objective, is to rescue the king and his royal guardians. We will lead them out of the royal gardens through this passage and retreat to a safe distance. Then we will recruit any house sorcerers who are outside of Cenarion Square when the stasis spell took effect, as well as any additional guardians and local constables. We will raise an army, and only then will we confront Salandrian. We will have one chance to win this battle, and we must fight it when we are prepared. Kotarian had opened his mouth to offer another comment when the air shimmered blue-green 15 yards in front of them. They stopped. Aventil pulled his sword, and the others stood ready. Hawk's pulse throbbed in his neck. Sweat beaded on his face. The blur took shape.
My, aren't we a resourceful bunch? I am impressed that you have managed to get this far. But we need to have a conversation.
There, hovering in front of them in the passageway, was a translucent greenish-blue image of the true leader, Salandrian.